Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan, everyone. Today we're diving into some pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, this is a good one. We're going to be looking at Imam al-Ghazali.
Specifically, his views on music. And, I think a lot of people might think, okay, an 11th century Islamic scholar, probably not too keen on rock and roll, right?
Right. But it's actually a lot more nuanced than that. This isn't just some old text that's irrelevant today.
Yeah, his work, Ihya Ulum, which translates to the revival of religious sciences, is still studied and debated by Muslims all over the world.
Exactly. And we're really going to be focusing on the emotional side of things, how music impacts our hearts, our souls, and how that relates to our connection with God, according to al-Ghazali.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think it's important to set the stage right. Who was Imam al-Ghazali? Why should we even care what he thought about music?
Well, imagine the Islamic world, like way back in the 11th century. We're talking about a period of incredible intellectual and spiritual flourishing. Al-Ghazali was born in Persia in 1058, and he quickly became one of the most brilliant minds of his time. We're talking like polymath status, theology, philosophy, law, Sufism, you name it. And he
Right.
wasn't just dabbling, he was a master.
And Sufism, for our listeners who might not be familiar,
Yeah, good point. Sufism is often described as the mystical heart of Islam. It's all about experiencing a direct personal connection with the divine. It's very much about the inner journey, purifying the heart, seeking spiritual enlightenment.
So al-Ghazali is a scholar, a mystic, a really deep thinker. And you mentioned his most famous work, the Ihya Ulum. What's the deal with that? What's it all about?
Well, the title itself gives us a clue. Revival of religious sciences. Al-Ghazali felt like in his time, the Muslim community was getting a little too caught up in just the outward practices of Islam, the rituals, the legal stuff.
Okay, so like going through the motions, but maybe losing sight of the deeper meaning.
Right. He felt like people were missing that heart connection, the inner transformation that's at the core of true faith. So he wrote the Ihya as kind of a wake-up call, a guide to reconnecting with the essence of Islam. And it's comprehensive. I mean, he covers everything from prayer and fasting to purifying your intentions and even like how to sleep and eat in a way that brings you closer to God.
Wow, so this is serious stuff. And I think this is where music comes in, right? I mean, music has this incredible power to affect us emotionally, to stir up feelings of joy, sadness, longing, even ecstasy.
Exactly. And that's precisely what makes al-Ghazali's perspective on music so intriguing, because he recognized this power, this potential for music to impact our spiritual state.
And the source we're working with even specifically mentions emotional religion in the title. That's a pretty big clue that al-Ghazali wasn't just focused on the dry, legalistic aspects of Islam, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Al-Ghazali was a firm believer that true faith is as much about feeling as it is about knowing. It's about cultivating those deep, heartfelt emotions, love, awe, gratitude, longing for God.
And that's where things get, well, complicated. Because music can stir up all sorts of emotions. Some might be considered, good from a spiritual perspective, like devotion or awe.
Yeah.
But others might be seen as distractions or even temptations, right?
Exactly. And that's the tightrope al-Ghazali walks. He doesn't just condemn all music outright. He recognizes its potential for good, especially in certain contexts like the Sufi practice of sama.
Ah, Sama. We touched on this earlier, but maybe give us a quick refresher.
Yeah.
What is Sama exactly, and why is it relevant here?
Sure. So sama literally means listening in Arabic. But in the Sufi context, it's not just about listening to any old sound. It's about a deep spiritual listening. Imagine like a gathering of Sufis chanting poetry, playing instruments like the ni flute or the oud, these beautiful, haunting melodies. The whole purpose is to create an atmosphere that helps people transcend the ordinary and experience a direct connection with God.
So it's about using music to induce a kind of spiritual ecstasy, a heightened state of awareness.
Yes, and this was something that al-Ghazali actually acknowledged as a legitimate path to spiritual experience.
So he was on board with Sama. No reservations.
Well, not quite. He had some very specific conditions, you could say. Like, the intention behind the sama had to be purely devotional, focused on God, not on personal pleasure or entertainment. And he stressed that the participants had to be, spiritually mature enough to handle the intensity of the experience.
Because I imagine, if you're not careful, music could easily just become a distraction, right? Instead of bringing you closer to God, it could pull you back into the world of desires and attachments.
Right. And this is where al-Ghazali gets into the concept of haram, which means forbidden. He believed that certain types of music could definitely fall into that category. Music that might incite lust or promote vanity, or distract people from their religious duties.
So, like, give me an example. What kind of music would al-Ghazali have been like, nope, that's a hard pass?
Well, he talks a lot about music that's specifically designed to stir up those base desires, the kind of music that makes you want to indulge in things that might be considered sinful. But it's not just about the lyrics or the genre, it's also about the overall effect the music has on you. If it makes you arrogant, if it makes you obsessed with worldly things, if it pulls your heart away from God, then that's a problem.
It's fascinating because this whole idea of music having a moral dimension, it's not unique to Islam, right? Throughout history, you see cultures and religions wrestling with this. Like even in ancient Greece, Plato talked about how certain kinds of music could corrupt the soul,
Yeah.
while others could ennoble it. It's this constant tension between the beauty and power of music and the potential for it to be misused.
Yeah, totally. And what Al-Ghazali offers isn't so much a set of rigid rules, but more like a framework for thinking about music, for being mindful of the kind of music we choose to listen to and how it affects us.
So it's not about banning all music. It's about cultivating a certain awareness, a discernment, right?
Right. It's about asking ourselves, is this music helping me grow spiritually, or is it distracting me? Is it feeding my ego, or is it humbling me? It's about remembering that the path to God requires vigilance, and that includes being mindful of even the seemingly small things, like the music we surround ourselves with.
It's all about intention then.
In a way, yes, but it's also about recognizing the power of music, the power it has to shape our thoughts, our emotions, our very beings. And I think that's one of the most enduring legacies of Al-Ghazali's work. It challenges us to engage in this ongoing conversation about music's role in our lives, individually and as a community.
To not just passively consume it, but to really think critically about its impact. And that's something we should all be doing, regardless of our faith or background, right?
Absolutely. Because in the end, it's about recognizing that music is a gift, a powerful force that can be used for good or for ill. And it's up to us to decide how we want to wield that power.
I think that's a great place to leave it. Food for thought for all of us.